Dr. Bhorat, thank you so much for speaking with us now. When I look at what you wrote in your own reflections here about some of the things that you witnessed when you're on the ground there in Mozambique, you speak about a 3-year-old with a 6-week-old fracture pre-cyclone, and you saw so many devastated families. Take us through one or two things that are still top of your mind at the moment.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having us. I think, the scale of the devastation in terms of the flooding caused by Cyclone Ida is really difficult to comprehend until you see it. And even though I arrived there on Monday, I think the first time it really hit home for me in terms of the extent of the damage was only on Wednesday when we managed to do a flyover with the SANDF once they had arrived. And the area we were working in, which is called Buzi, along the Buzi River, had an area of 60 kilometers by 50 kilometers that was underwater, at some points up to 8 meters high. So as we flew over, we could just see the tips of roofs, the tips of trees, and that really hit home for me in terms of the extent of it. We ended up at a camp, we call it a medical camp, but it's really a makeshift tent in the middle of an island within the flooding at Guara, and that's where I had my first experience with some of the patients, who I had literally 30 minutes to triage and decide we could only take 3 patients as an evacuation, medical evac, and I had to assess them. And that's where one of those patients you referred to, the young child with the fracture, who had a plaster of Paris on, but now had cuts and lacerations, and because of the complications of the water getting in the plaster of Paris. So that's one of the patients we evac. But I mean, what stuck with me that night, because I managed to take out 3 patients, but unfortunately there were 44 in an abandoned school, damaged school, that I assessed, and in an ideal setting would like to have helped all of them, but we could only take 3. And I think I slept that night very uneasily because of the choices I had made, knowing that I might go back the next day and not be greeted by some of those patients. That's how severe they were ill.
Okay. You also speak about the fact that, look, there will be, in the near future, deeply emotional scars that will be left upon some of that population. You speak about the kids and the mothers as well, about these emotional scars.
Yeah, I attended the clinic for 3 consecutive days, and the unfortunate memory I have is that the children, while interacting with them, they don't smile. They're terrified, they're traumatized. And, I tend to be a very kid-friendly doctor. I like to make them smile and be at ease during my consultation. But, as much as I tried, these kids were just terrified. I think we can only imagine what they lived through and how that's going to shape them going forward. It's hugely traumatic and sad to see. But I think, everyone affected there have seen people lose their lives. Limbs, have seen horrific things, and you see your home being destroyed. And these are poor people from a poor community, rural area that don't have a lot. And for that to be taken away, for them to stay 2 to 3 days, or up to 5 days hanging on a tree, while the lower body is submerged in swirling flood water, and then to be rescued, you can only imagine the psyche of them.
Very true. The waterborne diseases, surely this must be one of the fears now, when you're looking at Mozambique, because the infrastructure is destroyed, hospitals, it's difficult to get medicines to hospitals and so forth. Is that one of your fears now?
Yes, I think, the immediate impact obviously was the flood water and the immediate loss of life and infrastructure. There's still a risk of that because the rain is ongoing, and remember, there's a lot of dams that are now virtually overflowing, and they might have to, for safety reasons, open the dam walls that could cause downstream flooding. So flooding is not yet excluded in those areas, unfortunately. But you're right, a week later, the focus now shifts to the infectious diseases, which is the second wave of this tragedy. And we're talking about cholera, typhoid, malaria. It's a hugely endemic malaria area. So these diseases, without clean water, which no one has in the rural areas, without adequate food and medication access. As I said, the only way we could access these patients is by helicopter. So you've got a very limiting resource, limiting the amount of medication and medical personnel that can reach them. And when you do get a flight going to these areas, the first thing that the helicopter needs to be loaded with is food and water. So you have the limited capacity to take the medicines, etc. So you have to fight for your space. So infectious diseases, I think the first confirmed case of cholera has already been diagnosed and treated, but that's going to be a huge problem going forward.
Your teams in Zimbabwe and in Malawi as well, what sort of reports are coming out from those teams, your Gift of the Givers teams?
Yeah, so I mean, we have ground teams in both Mozambique and Malawi. I think I've been in contact with the Mozambican team quite a bit. I was based at Beira airport, and that was the worst affected. That's where the cyclone made landfall. So further south, north of Vilanculos, we have a second field team that is working mainly by boat and by land as far as they can go. Latest feedback is they've rescued close to 2,100 people by boat from islands and from water. They've set up a camp with local farmers in the area where they're trying to house and feed 6,000 people. We've dispatched a second medical team today, which consists of an orthopedic surgeon, 2 obs and gynaes, a pediatrician, dietitian, as well as 2 general practitioners who will be going and specifically be camped at that area to provide in-field medication as well as treatment.
Okay. And finally, Doctor, just one last personal question. You also speak about having to leave people behind because your quota for the helicopter would be full. You're only allowed to take 3 people on that helicopter when you were doing the rescues. How did it feel for you having to leave people behind?
It's very traumatic. I think, I've been on missions before, but this is the first time that I had to make a decision where we left people without access, without medical care, on the basis of how severe other people were. So they were severely ill, needed medical care, it's just they weren't as severe as the other person. So I think that's extremely traumatic for the search and rescue guys, for the medical personnel there. And as I said, I had a very uneasy sleep. Thank God I was able to go back the next day and the subsequent day with the helicopters and check up on those patients. And I feel a bit more relieved now that those patients are on the path to recovery from a medical point of view. So the decisions I made, while hard and difficult at that time, had a happy outcome in this scenario.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for your brave work in Mozambique. Dr. Qasim Bhorat there talking to us, Gift of the Givers medical team leader who's just arrived, not just arrived, but was in Mozambique for quite a while, rescuing the victims of the cyclone Idai.